Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, back with another little tips video. I just thought to follow up on last week's video where I told you about some of the worst snake bites that we've experienced here at 7th Level Reptiles. I thought I'd follow up with a tips video on ways to avoid getting bit. Obviously, when it comes to snakes, a lot of people have this fear and even maybe a misunderstanding about getting bit. And just how awful that's going to be, and there's this imagination and maybe what you've seen on movies or just the fear of the unknown. And so a lot of people, when they get a snake as a pet, are really nervous about getting bit. So I thought I'd take some time here and just show you some of the tips that I've learned over the years for not getting bit. I'm going to share with you 5 or 6 things here. And some of them are very simple. Well, all of them are very simple. Let me just start that. So I want to start out with, you know, typically by the time you get your ball python to full grown like this is Boomerang. He's my first male breeder that I ever had produce eggs for me. He's a sweet dude. I've had him for over 6 years. He's used to being handled by me, by the kids, by neighbors. He's very, very calm, docile, and well-trained, as much as you can train a snake, I guess. He doesn't sit or shake or anything like that, but he is a champ. Virtually no chance of getting bit by this guy. He was a little nippy sometimes, just defensively when he was a baby, but he grew right out of that. And the reality is that the vast majority of ball pythons with routine and considerate handling will get used to you and they will not bite. So the fear of a bite really is not, it doesn't need to be all that big of a deal with this species. Now, some are more prone to that. Some of them move around a lot more, a little more feisty than others. But with ball pythons, you really don't have to worry about that much. And that's what I'm primarily going to talk about, because I have ball pythons. I have one Burmese python, but he's never bit me. And the reality is, the truth is, when I had just pet snakes before I started breeding, over the years, the last 20 years, I've had numerous pet snakes, different times the others, ball pythons, boas, etc. And when I just had pets, I literally never one time was bit by one of my pet snakes. So I'm going to tell you how that happens, and that's actually going to be tip number 1. But once I started breeding and I started getting more and more animals and time started to become more of a factor, that's when I started to get bit from time to time. And the reality is, if you keep this many snakes, it's going to happen at some point, and it's not that big of a deal. But I do know that it's a fear. So let's talk about 5 ways that you can avoid getting bit if you're scared of your snake biting you. The other reality of it is, sorry, there's a gnat on the camera. The other reality is, we don't want our ball pythons especially, but any snakes, to get in the habit, because they tend to be creatures of habit by nature. And so if they get into that habit, they're more likely to continue in it. So we want to break them of that habit as early as possible, and really that can be helped by these 5 steps. There's nothing life-changing or rocket science. You don't need any special equipment. These are things that just, you probably can use just what you have around you. And the reason I started using some of these common items to help is because when I started out, I really didn't have a whole lot of money for any fancy tools or anything like that. So I was just trying to use what I had available to me. So everything I'm going to use is really cheap. You don't need any special stuff, and you probably already have it. So this is going to be most applicable to the babies, like I said. But even if you take in a rescue or something like that that's been neglected, maybe it's not used to being handled, or it's come from a bad environment where its needs weren't met well, and so it's extra defensive, this can help you with that too. But keep in mind, just have patience. These are amazing creatures, and the vast majority of cases, they are going to make an excellent pet if you just apply some steps and put in a little bit of work and show them a lot of love. So the first thing really is simple, but it's the most important. It's get to know your snake, whether it's a colubrid, a corn snake, a hognose, a rat snake, milk snakes, pythons, boas, anacondas, whatever it is. The most important thing you can do is get to know your snake. Observe the way they behave. They're going to tell you by their body language most of the time what they're thinking. So they actually do have different modes of thinking. So if I go to open this enclosure, which I'll show you here in a minute, and he's in a defensive posture, His neck would be real tense. He'd kind of have that S shape in the back of his neck, which means I don't know what's coming at me and I'm ready to defend myself if I need to. So when you observe that and take the time to observe it, it's not a good idea to stick your hand in the snake's face. It's probably going to bite you out of instinct, defending itself. Use that knowledge to affect the way that you approach your animal. So number one, snake's body language will tell you just about anything you need to know if you'll just pay attention. So get to know your snake and their attitude and their body language. If their neck is nice and relaxed and you pick them up and they don't really tense up or anything, you probably have nothing to worry about. Number two is going to be simply use common sense. All right. So we'll talk about that here in a minute, but let's say I'm going to get Boomerang out. Now with him, I don't really think that much about it because he's almost always relaxed unless he's in feeding mode, but I can come straight in and I can pick him up and he's not going to do anything. He's a little bit head shy, but not much because we've worked with him so much over the years. He'll let me touch his head. A lot of ball pythons are really head shy. That's not uncommon. But common sense would tell me if he's tense, if he's curled up in the back on the warm spot, or he's got that S in his neck like we just talked about, common sense would tell me don't reach for the front of him. Give him a confident pickup, but approach from the rear where, how I like to say it, the bitey end isn't facing you. You know, pick him up from behind and do it with confidence. A lot of times if you go in real nervous and shaky, you're going to make more nervousness on the snake's part, and they're more likely to assume a defensive posture. They're in their home and you're disturbing them in their home, so they're more likely to feel the need to be defensive. If you approach from the back, pick them up firmly and confidently and get them out of their enclosure into your hands, most likely that act in and of itself is going to disarm them to a degree once they're out of their home and they realize, okay, I'm not in my environment that I need to defend. I'm not in pain. I'm not hurt. I'm just speculating the thought process here because I haven't learned how to read the brain, read the thoughts of the snakes yet, but it's just common sense, right? They get out of there. They tend to calm down. Again, this is not always the case, and the younger the animal is or the less it's been handled, the less true this is going to be, or the more likely, I guess I should say, the more likely it's going to be that they will act differently. But if you approach from the backside, that just makes common sense. Pick them up confidently instead of being super cautious. And most of the time, they're gonna calm right down. Now, that may not apply to all snakes, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, which is where the other tools come in. So number three, the first tool I want to talk about for how you can avoid getting bit is to use something like a snake hook. Now, I don't use snake hooks with my ball pythons. The only reason I got this snake hook was for my Burmese python because that joker's about 20 pounds. He's about 7.5 to 8 feet long. And if he decided to do something, he could put a hurting on somebody. So from the time he was little until now, I have done tap training with the hook, and the hook helps to separate, kind of make sure his head's not facing me or he doesn't have a full reach as I'm pulling him out. And he's the same as the ball pythons. Usually, once I kind of get my hand on his middle and I start to pull him out, he's cool. He's not looking for food anymore, but he is a very food motivated snake. Mix my words up, but he's very food motivated. So he's always kind of on the lookout. So I just use this to rub his chin. That's how I do it. I just kind of rub his chin or his nose, let him know it's not feeding time. And then I will kind of use the hook to shield and pull him out. Now you can use this with your ball pythons. I never thought I would. With babies, I really think snake hooks aren't necessary, but there's nothing wrong with using them if it makes you feel more comfortable. But as I've gotten these big boys and girls, like I showed you a couple videos ago, you get these big girls in the breeding season and they're very, very, very food motivated. Sometimes they will come out of the tub as soon as you open it after that food. So there have been times where I have used the hook to actually latch the tub and pull it open, or I've had to tap the snake on the nose to get him to go back into his tub and then use it to push it shut. And an unintended benefit is sometimes the lower tubs. I use this to push them back so I don't have to bend over because I have a bad back, and it saves my back. But this is a good way to kind of shield yourself. You simply can use the hook, Let's see if you can see that I'm off the camera here. So I could use the hook to kind of hook his neck a little bit. That keeps him from being able to extend all the way and strike. Or I could grab his tail and use the hook to kind of gently lift his body up to help me get him out of the enclosure and kind of get him calmed down like we were talking about before. So that's the number one tool. And now I'm going to put him up and I'm going to demonstrate some other tools on my most spicy baby from this year. Hang on, we'll be right back. All right, so I'm going to come in here a little closer. It's probably going to cut my head off the top of the camera, but I know you probably don't mind seeing less of my face. But this girl here is a super inchy female. She has been spicy since the day she was born. She strikes constantly. You might have seen her on some of the shorts. I posted a short video with a bad to the bone in the background as she was striking at me. I was just trying to clean her tub, clean her enclosure out, her tub out, sorry, when she had made a little mess, and she was just going crazy. So the number, I guess this is number 4, but it's actually 2 tools that you can use with a spicy animal, is just a paper towel roll or the inner roll from it, right? So if the snake comes out and it's feisty or it's spicy, you can kind of use this to cover its head or its nose. That'll cause it to retreat. Every once in a while, they'll actually strike at this. That's a true defensive strike, but there's no heat coming off of it, so they're less prone to attack it than they are your hand, where they can feel the heat. They can sense it. But it just kind of can put it on their head and calm them down, which I'll show you in just a second. I started doing that a long time ago because I always have paper towels handy to clean. Or when I get to the end of the paper towel roll, then I would just save the roll and I'll use it. These are also great too. Sometimes if I've got a snake that doesn't want to feed, I'll cut these in half and put them in the tub for a little bit of a hide, because the size of the tubs, I don't normally use hides, but I'll cut it in half and use it as a hide. Sometimes I'll get a picky eater to start eating. That has nothing to do with not getting bit, just a tip. But so we'll see if we can bring you in here to see this feisty girl. In addition to being spicy normally, she's actually in shed right now, which tends to make them a little bit more spicy. But you can see what I was talking about. Look at that S shape in her neck. She is on guard. She is ready to go. So the last thing I want to do is come in from the front, although sometimes I'll tap them on the head. That'll get her withdrawal, but you see she's right back to this defensive posture. She really wants to defend herself. So what I would do in this case, I'm going to show you. We'll back out here. And if I were going to pull her straight out, I would use the paper towel roll. You see she's about to strike. I would use the paper towel roll and just kind of put it over her head, and I can grab her. Or in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull her out. Look, she immediately goes into a flight mode, if you can see that. She went into flight mode immediately. So I'm going to use common sense and approach from the back, and I'm going to pick her up. I'm not going to take my eye off of her, because she is still in this extremely defensive posture. She's not going to calm down the way that a mature snake that's used to being handled would. She's still on guard. She's looking at this paper towel roll. So now we're going to go into number 5. Like, what can I do at this point? I need to clean the tub. I don't want to just sit here and hold her with one hand. I want to clean her out. So I'm going to take just a loose paper towel, which she still wants to attack, and I'm going to set her down here like this. I'm going to pull her back so you can see her on the camera, and I'm just going to cover her with that paper towel. This is number 5. So now I can touch her. She's probably not going to do anything. But what I'm doing is I'm giving her a sense of security. She can feel secure knowing that she's not exposed. And a lot of times, even though a few times she's actually struck when I've done this, even under the paper towel, you can see, well, you can't see her now, but she's calmed down. She's not really doing anything. So this gives me the ability I need to go ahead and replace those paper towels or water if I've got to scrub stuff down. And these are just barely lightly soiled, so I'm just putting new clean paper towels in here. And then we'll do a more thorough cleaning over the weekend or once she sheds. And that's it. Since she is in shed, I'm going to add a little water back here. But you notice now, I haven't had to worry about her coming over. If I had her uncovered, she would be crawling over here, striking at me constantly. That's just her personality. She's much more spicy than most. I don't want you to think that this is indicative of most ball pythons. Ooh, she turned around on me. She almost got me when I stuck my finger under there. But you can just look how tense she is. And this is what happens when she's out and now she feels exposed. And that's what we talk about, using a little bit of common sense. You see, now I've got my hand on her and she's calm. If she's really spicy or you're really feared, I can pick her up in this paper towel, set her down, no problem. No issues at all doing that. And again, this is the spiciest baby we have. And I simply pick her up, say, thanks for proving my point. Have a good day. Oh, there you go. She was kind of up on the top. And then I put her back and we're good to go. So I know that was a long explanation, but just remember, the best thing you can do to keep from getting bit is to learn your snake. Study your snake. Pay attention to his body language. And then once you know, use some common sense. That's number 2. Just use some common sense. Don't put your hand in the face of a snake that is scared and looking to defend itself. Number 3, you could use something like a snake hook. Really, anything like this you could use to kind of, even a stick. I don't recommend using a stick out of the yard, but something that is a barrier between you and the animal to help you get it out of its enclosure. Larger snakes, I would definitely advise a snake hook. Number 4, paper towel roll, something similar to that, but you're almost always going to have these on hand if you're working with snakes, because you're going to be using them for cleaning all the time. And the last thing is, if you've got to have that snake out of its enclosure to do some cleaning or work, and you don't have somebody helping you, or you don't have I could easily put it in one of these other tubs, but that takes more time. So a lot of times I don't do that when I'm going through 50 babies trying to clean paper towels one after the other. That takes a long time. So I'll just set them next to the tub, cover them with a paper towel so they don't feel exposed, and I keep on going. That's it. Simple. Like I said, nothing fancy, nothing expensive, no special tools you need. And there are plenty of others. Don't get me wrong. There are lots of other ways. This is not the way. This is a way. And I'm a firm believer in that. Find what works for you. None of these methods pose any risk of harm to the snake, which is the best part. And they're all cheap or free. You're already going to have the tools. So that makes me even happier, because I'm kind of a cheap guy. So anyway, I hope you found that helpful. Please give me your comments and thoughts. If you know another way that's really worked well for you to help you keep from getting bit, why don't you share it in the comments for everybody to read. But anyway, that's it for today. I hope this was helpful to you. And thank you for joining me on the journey and looking at some cool snakes. I want to remind you, support US ARC. And if you have any opportunity, take it. Take the opportunity to share the love of reptiles with anybody you can. Have a great day.